Trade rumors continue to escalate surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks as a brand new report has dropped revealing a very wild Brook Lopez trade. We're going to break that down as well as discuss Doc Rivers and Giannis Antetokounmpo. They gave some major praise to Gary Trent Jr. following their big win against the Detroit Pistons. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the 80% who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Bucks content, and we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news. So make sure to hit that button. It's free, and we're on the road to 1,500 subscribers. But let's dive right into it. There's a lot to go over today. Obviously, the Milwaukee Bucks had a huge win yesterday against the Detroit Pistons, an absolutely crazy game. We saw, of course, the Pistons miss a couple free throws to win in the game, then the Bucks came back and won in overtime on the back of Giannis. But today we're going to be focusing on a couple things. We'll get into the kind of Gary Trent Jr. praise from Giannis and Doc Rivers later in the video, but we're going to start with some trade rumors and reports that are going down because, again, the Milwaukee Bucks, according to all reports and all sources, are actively trying to make a move. Now, whether that's Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, Marjon Beauchamp, all these different guys, maybe, other players, they're still in the process of playing games, and they still need to win these games. So now, the record's slowly but surely improving, and the East is very, very bad. And again, Chris Middleton's on the horizon of returning, hopefully over the next couple of weeks. So as they shop a lot of these players, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Again, they have a bunch of young guys coming up, so it'll be interesting. But let's start with this. The Bucks predicted to land $74 million forward by cutting ties with Brook Lopez. And again, Brook Lopez is one of the players. Brook Lopez could get traded. Basically, nobody is safe at this point besides, the obvious guys, Dame and Giannis. Anybody could trade. Brook Lopez is another one that is probably, on the trade block right now, according to all reports. So the Milwaukee Bucks currently hold a 4-8 record after their overtime win. A deal is most certainly coming as the team awaits the return of Chris Middleton, and Dame has been out with a concussion. And Bobby Portis was also a surprise late scratch in their game yesterday. And again, we'll keep you up to date with that. They could be working on a trade surrounding Bobby Portis because if you've been following the Bucks and Bobby Portis for a while, one of his biggest kind of calling cards as a player is not missing games. And he's come out and said multiple times that he's going to do everything in his power to not miss games. And he was held out for a very minor injury. So there is a chance that this minor injury, is just nagging him, but there's also a chance that there's also a chance they're working on a trade right now. But focusing on Brook Lopez, you can see this here. The Bucks received Keldon Johnson in exchange for Brook, AJ Johnson, a first, and a 2031 second. So that would, of course, be the 2031 first round pick. And this one is extremely interesting. And again, it's intriguing. So this obviously gives Milwaukee rationale is that adding another scorer could go a long way in helping the Bucks break out of their early season woes. And to a degree, obviously we look at the games that they've played, the games that they've lost. Dame and Giannis have both played very well throughout the season, aside from Dame's last game where he put up 14 points in a very brutal loss against the Celtics. But nonetheless, if they add a guy like Keldon Johnson, it's interesting. And you're giving up Brook, you're giving up your first-round pick in this most previous draft, and AJ Johnson, who's shown some potential in the Summer League and preseason. You're also giving up a first-round pick swap and a 2031 first-round pick. So if you're looking at this deal, you're thinking, okay, where would Keldon Johnson fit into the lineup? He's not a phenomenal defender, but he is a very solid scorer. He's had some better years, and of course now he's a bit in a logjam there. He's in a bit of a logjam with San Antonio, but this season he's averaging 12, 5, and 1.5 assists. Doesn't turn the ball over, and he hasn't been shooting the ball very well at all. He's shooting 23.8% on corner threes, 45% from the field, and again, 37 or 36.9 to be exact percent of his shots are threes. So he's a guy who can score the ball very solid. He's only 25 years old, so he would really be if you're making this move, you're hoping that Keldon Johnson will be a fundamental piece of this team going forward, and you're hoping that he would be, a piece that they can build around Giannis, and then depending, Dame's 34, so depending how long he stays in his, somewhat prime. But it's interesting in the sense of I'm not entirely sold on this move from the Milwaukee Bucks perspective because you're giving up you're not getting a center back for one, so I guess you'd have to have Bobby Portis in at, starting at center, play small ball with Giannis there. Then you have AJ Johnson, the guy you just drafted. You finally get some of the young guys. You get a decent, draft pick, at least seemingly. And you're also giving up your second and a first-round pick swap. So I probably wouldn't do this deal if I'm the Milwaukee Bucks. If you made it this far, though, let me know down below. Would you do this deal? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because it doesn't help them on the defensive end a ton. And if you need more offense, we saw it in yesterday's game. We're hoping that Gary Trent Jr. can provide that. So I don't think it's great. We see here Lopez being sent down Milwaukee would leave a massive void in the Bucks defense. The team would be left with Antetokounmpo as their best rim protector, while Portis would most likely start at center. So I don't love it. I don't think it makes a ton of sense. I think if they're going to get rid of any of their, young players, whether that's AJ Johnson, whether that's even just their picks, like a swap, they need to do it to either get a great defensive player. We've been discussing Marcus Smart a little bit. There's some other rumors going around. Or you're going to get a guy like Walker Kessler, who's at least, a big man that can help them. If you're going forward, if you're going to get rid of Brook Lopez, you need to have somebody coming in to replace him. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. Not a huge fan of this deal. I don't think it makes a ton of sense. But again, the Bucks are actively shopping everybody, so it could come to fruition. But let's focus on Doc Rivers and, Gary Trent Jr. most specifically. So you can see here, Doc Rivers names Milwaukee Bucks player he told to shoot the damn ball. He took 1,000 shots in practice. And he's obviously referring to Gary Trent Jr. And he spoke out in his contribution. Basically, Gary Trent Jr., like I've been mentioning, if you've been following the channel for a while, he's been in a obviously horrific slump. But his minutes prior to yesterday's game against yesterday night's game against Detroit Pistons, he wasn't really getting any minutes. He played 6 minutes in the game against the Raptors, and looking, again, he got injured, so he was out a little bit, but he was losing minutes to guys like AJ Green, losing minutes to guys like Ryan Rollins, and just, everybody really. Sorry, even AJ, obviously AJ Green, but you're thinking about now in the future how guys like AJ Johnson can maybe come up, and not this season necessarily, but going forward. And again, Gary Trent Jr. is only signed to a 1-year deal, but things just look bleak for Gary Trent Jr., very much so. However, he comes back and he absolutely bounces back in the game against the Detroit Pistons. He finally got out of his slump. He was hitting threes. He was playing great pesky defense, and so much so that Doc Rivers came out and basically was going to give the game ball to Gary Trent Jr. because of how good he played. And Gary Trent Jr. told Doc Rivers prior to yesterday night's game, hey, I'll be fine. Trust me. Keep playing me. I'll be good. And he was, and he did great. So Doc was obviously going to give the game ball to Gary Trent Jr., but he ultimately gave it to Giannis because he had 59 points and carried them to the win. But then Giannis came out and gave the ball to Gary Trent Jr., and then, of course, Gary gave it back. But it kind of goes to show. But the camaraderie on this team is very impressive, and ultimately, I think even despite their 4-8 start to the season and what's been one of the more interesting seasons, I could say, in the past decade really for the Milwaukee Bucks, it's starting to turn itself around. They're now 4-8. It's not a good record, but they're slowly getting back in there. The East is very weak, and when you look at the kind of the outlook going forward of guys like Damian Lillard and Giannis, of course, they're both going to play well. You start to think about getting Chris Middleton back. You start to think about getting the Gary Trent Jr. that you signed up for when you signed him to that 1-year veteran minimum deal. And again, Gary Trent Jr. is going to play a huge factor in this. We saw yesterday when other players step up. Yesterday, Brook Lopez stepped up with 29 points. If you have other players aside from Giannis and Dame step up and able to actually get into the mix and score the ball, that's when things start to get a lot easier for the Milwaukee Bucks, and it's a lot easier to see them winning more games going forward. And that is the biggest difference for this team, is going to be whether or not the role players are able to score points, whether that's AJ Green or Gary Trent Jr. And then again, you're going to get some other guys back. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens as they continue. Again, they play on Saturday. That'll be an interesting game. They need to continue to get these wins and pile them up. They're blessed in the sense of the East is a very bad conference. They're still right in the middle of it, right in the thick of the playoff race. And again, they're probably not going to win the division. You have the Cavs 13-0 at top of it, but they can make a big push to at least get into a solid and favorable seed to get them a decent playoff matchup as they continue to win games. The most important thing is win games, get healthy, and build up the chemistry between Dame and Giannis. Because again, dealt with injuries last year, both of them, and now Dame is injured again. And hopefully, again, his only concussion, so he should be able to come back soon. But the hope is that they'll both be good going forward. But that'll wrap it up. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. Would you do the Brook Lopez deal? I don't think I would. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially because Brook is starting to play decent. Although I would not be opposed to them entertaining some other offers surrounding the center position. But let me know down below what your thoughts are. See you later.